So, without doing anything at all, just allow yourself to be as you are without any commentary, without any need to change anything, without a need to be different, more spiritual, less spiritual. Forget about that altogether. It's not helpful one way or the other. Doesn't matter how many times you've meditated. Every moment that we just stop and pause and give an allowance for what's here already and let ourselves be interested, curious about what is real. So close your eyes and let the breath flow gently into the body, setting aside anything that might present itself as a distraction. Let yourself know that you can return to that if you want. You can get to it later and let this be a time to nourish you. So your attention can continue to turn inward as you invite the breath more fully in the body. So that you're breathing not only in the torso, that is important, especially to let yourself soften around the heart, around the rib cage. But also let the belly be soft. Let the breath seep down into the belly, softening, expanding, widening, all the way down to the hip carriage. And with every breath, extending deeper still to the base of the body, noticing how the breath invites a sense of anchoring, a sense of weightedness or stability at the base of the body. Now you may notice that as you breathe into the body, that already, if the mind was very active, it starts to still, it starts to evoke a quietude. So let yourself be weighted in the base of the body, like you have an anchor or roots that extend down through your sit bones, right at the base, down through the legs to the feet, grounding you here at the base of your beingness, feeling your connection to the earth. Notice that in the base of the body there is a great stability. It's a very nice feeling. It's very encouraging to descend into the body and to not be so distracted by the activity of the mind. Not that we're pushing any of that away, but we're just inviting the breath, inviting more of you to be here, here, here in the body. Now go ahead and let the breath return to its natural rhythm, inhaling through the nose. You may notice that by itself now it's already deepened. It has a fluidity to it. It has its own rhythm. So there's a very soft, gentle letting go of the breath, trusting that the body will continue to breathe all by itself. Now, as you let go of the breath in this way, you may also notice that there's an intelligence in the body that when we're directing, monitoring, controlling, trying to steer the meditation, that this intrinsic intelligence may not be noticed. And as you notice, there is this aspect of noticing that includes a very wide presence. You could say the noticing itself is consciousness, is your presence, is awareness. So allow yourself to soften, to widen as awareness. Very still, very wide, very deep. Awareness doesn't have a boundary. It's just the isness of you, noticing what may be happening in the body of you, in the way of thoughts, sensations, energy. Awareness naturally, by itself, is a full capacity of allowance. Doesn't effort to change anything. So thoughts can be here, and as they're allowed to be here, notice that there may be a feeling of more spaciousness around thought. Thought may begin to feel more like a passing breeze or a flow of water that you can just allow to happen without any need to engage. Just noticing. And noticing that naturally, when the mind and thought are allowed to just be as they are, that there is a quality of quietude, of stillness, here, and thought may even continue to pass through it. Sometimes feeling perhaps strong, and it may pull to your attention, and other times very subtle. Welcome the movement of thought without needing to change it. You may also notice that there may be recurring thoughts with recurring themes. That may also have an energetic quality to them. Some may feel positive, encouraging, and others may feel kind of judgy or negative. But notice how awareness, the space of you, is indifferent. Because awareness has a clarity to it that doesn't fuse with thought or give it any kind of special meaning. You are not your thoughts. Thoughts may be happening, but they could never, ever, no matter how positive or how negative or anything in between, they do not define who you are. So let the clarity of awareness soften any stickiness to thought as having meaning about who and what you are as a definition. So see how when we hook into thought, that we can often develop a self-concept about who we are, an image. In this image, this kind of definition creates a veil that can have all kinds of energies associated with it, behaviors, memories, ways of being. So this loss of identity is the loss, the lifting, the seeing through the veil of you, the layers of definitions, the self-defining concept. Let it be lifted. Notice that awareness with its profound clarity and lightness does not hold an image. It's very vacant, you could say, spacious. Can't see it with your physical eyes. Can't think it with your thoughts. You can't know awareness that you are through any thought, any perceiving notion. So see what happens when you view through the lens of awareness. Doesn't have any filtering qualities. It's crystal clarity. Luminous, spacious, clear. And at the same time, there may be a variety of thoughts happening in the space of awareness. That's all right. They don't define you. Here is where the thoughts that appear may be useful for your functionality or not. In this space of clarity, you can choose what to follow and what to let pass, what to give meaning to, and what to let empty out as insignificant. So it's important here that we're not looking for a particular state of mind to hold on to. Letting all states, all images pass. What remains? What is left to define you? Can you be okay with the nothingness that implodes, that doesn't need a position, doesn't have to be right or wrong, doesn't have to fit in or exclude, just openness. Just welcome a spaciousness of acceptance without efforting to accept. So here, whatever presents itself in your day-to-day functionality can be seen through the lens of clarity. And this is how we are able to discriminate between the real and the unreal. Now, awakening is about the real. What's real? What's actually happening? So if we're perceiving through a lens of cluttered notions, definitions, images, beliefs, various veils that confuse our perception, and we are not seeing reality. So this is to lose your self-defining concept and all of the associations that go along with that. Now let yourself feel deeply, fully, the spaciousness of you that not only includes the space of the mind, because that's a very important part, but also let's just explore a bit what happens in the body, in the space of the heart. Noticing how it is to let your heart, the sensations in the front, in the back, all around the width and the depth of the heart, just be as they are. Now, right away, you may notice if there are lingering thoughts that often, when they're held, they'll have an emotional content connected to them. An old memory, perhaps, that then became part of your defining concept, the image of you. It contributed to that. So, awareness of the heart without allowing the experiences of the heart, the history of the heart, to also be a way in which you define who you are. For instance, a person who has been broken, hurt, victimized, or has hurt others, been a bully or the abuser, so to speak. So let all of those energies, let the history of the heart be present in this wide, wide space of awareness. So as you unhook your perceiving notion of you through the filters of the mind, and these empty and the mind becomes more and more clear. It's not that one happens after the other. It's not a linear process of emptying out of old identifying concepts, experiences. It's happening all at the same time. So this doesn't mean, again, that we suppress, deny, or hold tight any experience of the heart. Rather, again, we allow the luminosity of awareness to shine here in all directions, opening and softening any residual content that contributes to a self-defining concept, to an identity, to what you hold, what you think might be you, but it's not. You're not your emotions. You're not your past. You're not your behaviors. You're not the result of your experiences, negative or positive, anything in between. As there's no denying that in the human condition, all kinds of experiences happen. Now, can you let yourself empty of the content? As you relax, as the space of luminous awareness, noticing and allowing. Sometimes you may be quite surprised at what you feel or what you see or what may empty out of you as energy or sensation or feeling. Let that happen. It doesn't define you. And let that happen also in the space of the belly, where we began this meditation, which is a very important place to begin because it offers a wide base of stability in the ground of your beingness, ground of awareness. So let yourself settle here in this essentially a non-locatable presence. So you can't truly locate who you are, what you are in any one place. As you deepen in the loss of identity and the loss of your self-image, with the loss of your self-defining concepts, as these veils continue to be lifted through the lightness of your beingness, you find more and more that you exist everywhere without a boundary, as a non-locatable presence. There may be experiences, memories, sensations that float through you. Don't hold them. Don't try to grasp. Don't effort to push anything away. Stay with the pushing, with the pulling, in a full allowance. You may find as you give, and giving is not even the right word because there isn't a doing in this, but as you simply hmm, hmm, don't offer any resistance. And resistance really just shows up in trying to hold on to something or trying to push something away. Like it's almost like we learn through our conditioning to fish with these hooks, to hook into something within our life experience and say, ah, yes, that's the story about me that I want to hold on to. Yes, that's the one that fits. Or or no, that doesn't serve me any longer. I think I'll fish again and I'll hook into this one. Ah, so awakening is about no longer fishing for an identity in the life stream of you, to let yourself be the stream without any hooks. So there's no pushing, there's no pulling, there's an effortless allowance, and there's a fluidity of you. It's very unknown, it's very spacious. And is that all right? And anytime an impulse presents itself to hook in somewhere, whether it be a new idea, something to become, or a new identity that you see in someone else that you think, oh, I could be like that, or something from the past that you might want to reconstruct. Just let all of that open. Not necessary. The invitation is to let yourself be unknown, to travel without hooking in, without fishing, without efforting to locate yourself in any one thing. But here, through this wide lens of crystal clarity, luminosity of awareness, to see yourself as everything, not different, not separate, allowing the veils of separation to be entirely lifted, seen through, not necessary. And notice that there's a very simple, quiet contentment and not needing to locate yourself, to define yourself, to identify yourself as any one thing, as a condition of your past, or as an accumulation of your past, or as an accumulation of knowledge, of experience. It doesn't mean that any of the knowledge and experiences and identities and roles that you've held or played throughout your life are not useful or haven't been meaningful. But here you're maturing. This is an evolution. This is not spirituality 101. This is not even spirituality. This is reality. This is to be real, to be unhooked, is to walk out of the door of insanity and allow yourself to see clearly who and what you are. And to let yourself be oriented from luminosity, from clarity, from the heart and ground of your being, without clutter, without regrets, without fear, and with absolutely nothing to attain. This is the doorway of liberation. It never ends. Just walk through. Let's just hang here together in this luminous space, this delightful ground, already awake, already enough, already essentially satisfied with itself, without a need to collect anything. Just be as you are. Then we'll talk a little. Okay. Well, it feels like quite a bit was covered in that meditation, so you may want to utilize that for as much as it feels useful to you. And I want to speak about a phrase that I've heard often from the Gospel of Thomas, which is one of my favorite Gospels. There are many, many good things in there, but there's one particular teaching in there that goes something like this. I may be paraphrasing it. But what he says is, she or he shall seek until she finds. At first, she will be disturbed, or he will be disturbed. Then he will reign over all things. Then he will reign over all things. So let's take this apart. The first part, she or he shall seek until he or she finds. Now this is really a very deep invitation, because there's many forms of spirituality. All are useful. Many are preliminaries. Many are warm-ups. And we will go through phases and stages in our spiritual seeking. And it all has to do with the clarity of our intention, to be able to ask ourselves the question, what does this spiritual life aspire to? What am I in it for? What am I after? And it's this kind of answer, whatever the answer is to that question, that will steer and guide how we practice or what we involve ourselves in, what our life is about. So if we have an idea in our head, like I want a spirituality that is going to improve my relationships, make me feel better, make me a better person, give me some kind of image, or, whatever it is. None of those things there's nothing wrong with that. Or special powers, or somehow make me, untouchable or less human to ascend this, world, to be beyond it somehow. So all of this, so we will seek and seek, and we'll maybe get involved in different things, and we'll get involved and we'll get involved, and we'll actually get what we think we wanted. And then we'll say, wow, that's not it. There's still an itch within me. There's still something driving me that hasn't been satisfied yet. It's almost like when the impulse to awaken lives within us, it's almost like it's like an itch that can't quite get scratched until it's satisfied. So we may be able to be involved in all sorts of things, but that sense of satisfaction doesn't quite come yet. So we have to keep seeking and seeking and seeking. And when this seeking, starts to open up our identity, all, like the egoic identity, the egoic nature, the way of being almost like, let's say, characterized by our past, by all of our beliefs, our notions, our past, having the content of that, our thoughts, define us. And then having that be the veil that we wear, which could be many, many layers. So that's the self-defining concept. So what spirituality does, true spirituality, it kind of nicks away at that. It's like an artist, that's sculpting, that's clearing off all that isn't true. When the clarity of our intention gets more and more clear that what we're after is what's real and what's true, spirit will start to nick away these old identities, what doesn't serve, what isn't real, what isn't real. And upon seeing all of that, there's there's a disturbance. It's like, whoa, this isn't at all what I thought it would be. I was speaking with somebody the other day, and she had spoke about, being on the mountaintop, years and years of all kinds of practices and seeking. And I can relate to this, and many of us can. And it's like you get up to the top of the mountain, and there's a period, whether it be a couple of moments or a couple of years, maybe 10 years even, and it feels like there's bliss and happiness and peace, and kind of you're in a bubble of enlightenment, whatever the idea of enlightenment might be at the time, and can just hoist the enlightenment flag. Everything's fine. I'm finished. And that might go on and go on, and then something happens, and it's like that itch gets activated again. It's like, whoa, this isn't it either. And we start to get called back down the mountain, because as these veils, these identities are, holes are poked into them, or they're lifted and they're begun to see through, and there may be some disturbance along with it. Well, what that disturbance is about is that we have to actually still meet our humanity. We still have to take full responsibility for our lives, for our traveling on this earth, for being in relationship to life. Now, if we have a notion that enlightenment is about this mountaintop experience, there's still separation in that. It's like, oh, I'm here and everything else is there, and I don't need to deal with it. Well, the disturbance can be initially that, whoa, I do have to deal with it. I have to actually come all the way down into my humanity, travel right back down the mountain, and turn and lift any stone that has been left unturned, and be able to have a true human experience. So as we were sitting in the meditation together, this cannot be accomplished if we're still perceiving our identity through our minds, because we're going to get hooked again. But the awakening, what it does is it takes us out of the mind and into this wider space of awareness. So what I am is spirit. So I'm the actual perceiving. I'm the actual noticing. I'm the seeing. And then we can start to peer into those areas that had been pushed away, run away from, that we've been afraid of. And so then we allow the content of that to empty, the experience of that to empty. And often this is called the embodiment, because we're coming down into our bodies. We're grounding through our feet in the here and now. We're not taking on a new identity whatsoever, but we're taking full responsibility for our divinity within our humanity. We're actually returning to what we always have been. So we're not acquiring anything new, like nothing is being added on. It's just all of these false notions, these false masks, the way that we've characterized ourselves, and then try to live in particular grooves, different kinds of lifestyles that corresponded to these self-concepts. That we're not able to do anymore, because we've become so sensitive that it doesn't work. And the temptation, you could say, almost like there's a gravitational pull to go back to what's familiar, and that happens because we haven't, and it doesn't happen overnight, become accustomed to being in the space of not knowing. So how do I behave? How do I live? How do I just be a stream of life? How do I be in the stream of life without self-referencing the past, without going into these old patterns, without leaning into what might be familiar, without going back to an old way of being? I mean, we might try to, but it won't feel good. And we'll know because our eyes have been opened. we'll know that that's not the truth. And what's awakened in us is truth, is reality. So when we listen to that, we let ourselves get quiet. And the more we let this silent enjoyment implode within us, the tendency to retreat back to an old way will be less and less. The tendency to feel the need for an identity, for a position, will be less and less and less. And it's a process, it's an unfoldment. For some people, it goes a little bit quicker, and for some of us, it takes more time. So the activating agent, the great facilitator is awareness, is how much you can allow yourself to lean into the lightness, the enjoyment of your being. That is the only aspect of you that can trust the unknown, that can trust what it does not know yet, has not become yet, has no reference point for. That agent within you that's awake, that's the only part that can trust. The mind can't trust. The way that the ego may try to reconfigure itself knows nothing about trust, only knows drama, only knows fear, only knows how to engage in conflict on the inside and the outside. So we can't allow that to be our reference point. But if you lean in here to the lightness and the enjoyment of your own being, when you're honest with yourself, when you allow that to be here, when you know that it's here, you can know it without naming it. It's the isness of you. That you can trust. That can trust the unknown. It is the unknown. And that will guide you. There's another, let me get to the last piece before I say this, is that last line he says, and then you shall reign over all things. So that doesn't at all mean like reigning in a sense. You can think of that meaning like you have some kind of special powers. That's not it at all. Like to reign over all things in a sense, in a very big sense, is to be so strong in your own presence that you're a benefit, that you're beneficial to humanity, that your presence alone, just by being who and what you are, is a source of strength, wisdom, compassion to all beings. Something that cannot be attained through personal possessions, through achievements, through accomplishments. It can't be attained at all. But just by being so true and being so real, then you are a benefit to others. So this is what it means to reign over all things. Not to be special. You may be noticed, you may not be noticed. It doesn't mean that somehow you'll magically become popular. It doesn't mean that at all. But someone whose eyes have begun to open will notice you, will notice the real you, and that will be a benefit. That will be a peace that cannot be attained, cannot be given, cannot be taken away. It's the peace beyond all understanding. So that's to be here in this world, not to be of it, not to be identified with it, but to be able to function from a place of clarity, from a place of peace. Now, somebody in a question asked about societal roles. Well, you can step into any role you want. without being cluttered, without carrying a suitcase on your back, without carrying blame, shame, anger, just being emptied out so you can show up in any role that's necessary, whether it be mother, father, whatever the role at work is and, needs to make the money and pay the bills. You can step into those roles with a clarity, with a functionality, because you're not all caught up and you're not hooked into all other kinds of things that just clutter our energy. I mean, I actually have a fairly complicated life. I have for years, but somehow, and sometimes it feels like magic, that I can move into different roles with an easement. Some of them I'm not interested in. I mean, might not be my preference, but there it is. There it is. That's what reality is showing up, showing me what I need to do at the time. And then I do it. It happens. It happens and it doesn't exhaust because there isn't an ownership in it. There isn't a, this is what I am. This defines me. I'm not taking credit for whether it goes right or whether it goes, according to society, wrong. All I know is that I show up and give it the fullness that I can at any given moment. And that's the best that any of us can do. So the last piece that I wanted to say on that, I love this other expression from one of the Gospels. It could be, actually, I don't know which one it is at all. I can't remember, but it says, you cannot put new wine into old wineskins. And this is what we've been talking about. Like, once you empty out of the old, and the new is just bubbling up inside of you. I mean, it's always been there, but it feels new, the freshness, the aliveness, the clarity of the spirit of you, the source of you. It's impossible to go back into an old wineskin, to put on that old character. I mean, people find this out a lot when they go back to old relationships, former relationships, and they try to make them work because they think, now they might still have an idea that they're just a better person, but actually they're not a person. You're not a person. And they think that somehow they can fix and make certain things different and better. Well, maybe sometimes that works out, but for the most part, you can't fit into an old wineskin.